don't know what the hell, to be psychoanalyzed. And I would ask, necessary for what? Where are you going? What do you want? Yes, sure. If you want to get to New York, it's necessary to take the highway. But where are you going? What do you mean necessary? Well, is it necessary for becoming a Buddha? Anybody want to be a Buddha? Do you know what it means to be a Buddha? How do you know you want to be a Buddha if you don't know what a Buddha is? People think, well, it would be nice to have peace of mind, to be serene, to be calm, to be undisturbed by this, that, and the other. But you see, so long as you make all those things objects of desire, you are defining yourself as lacking them. And a person who is looking for peace is obviously in turmoil. A person who is looking to end conflict is in conflict. And so the more you strive to stop the interior commotions, the more you are stirring them up. You are smoothing the waters with flat irons. So then then comes up the people who say, all right, now, if you are going to tell us that meditation is not necessary, and that it's all here and now, then why do you meditate? Why do you have religion at all? Why do you have rites? Why do you chant? Why do you do this, that, and the other? Why do you even talk about it? And my answer to that is, there is no good reason for it whatsoever. This is a form of joyous energy, and it's a form of dance. It's a groovy thing to do. There are all kinds of groovy things to do, and to everybody according to his taste. If, of course, you can make anything whatsoever, any human activity, into meditation, simply by being with it, and doing it completely to do it. In other words, when you're, say, swimming, if you really enjoy swimming, you're not swimming to get to the other side of a river or to swim so many yards or any competing with yourself or with other people like that. You're swimming to experience the water rippling past you, the floating sensation, to lie on your back and look at the blue sky and the gulls circling in. You are doing that. Every moment of it. You are simply absorbed in this ripply, luminous world, looking at the patterns and the shifting net of sunlight underneath you, and the sand way down. See? That's it. That's what it's about. That's what swimming's about. So you're not going anywhere. Getting together and chanting together is what a lot of people do when they don't have television to look at. In the jungles, on the steppes, in mountain communities, since as long as anyone can remember, people got together and do a thing I call digging sound, and played with the sonic energy of the universe in just the same way as I described somebody playing with the water while swimming. And these people, when they do that, they don't worry about where they're going or what their destiny is or any nonsense of that kind, because they're completely alive. So to understand all that I'm trying to say, I would like to see if you could change your basic notions of economics. And I mean the economics of energy. We are always scrimping and saving because our economics are based on scarcity rather than exuberance. But notice that the economics of nature are allegedly wasteful. They're based on exuberance. Many more seeds than are necessary for trees. Many more spermatozoa than are necessary for people. Many more stars than anybody could conceivably want. Galaxies galore. Nature is a vast celebration of energy. But if you complain about this and say, oh dear me, it's all running out, that means, you see, that you are looking for fulfillment in time, and you say, if there is not enough future, we won't get the golden goody we're looking for at the end of the line. See, there is that feeling. There is the great golden goody. that flower, the golden goody, isn't at the end of the line. You're in it. The radiating petals, the mandala, the great circle of the flower, is the galaxy in which you live. It is the whole universe radiating around you in which you are. And this radiation is also cycling. It's the dance in which you're involved. If you'd only realize that the purpose of life is not in the future. And if you think it is, you'll go on and on and on looking for it there and never find it. Because the future in its own way fades out in the same way as the past fades out. You get older and older and older, and if you don't come crash, you just peter out. It wasn't there. And you may feel vaguely cheated about the whole thing. You were given the come on, that there was something coming. There was that thing at the end of the line, the golden goody. But you've been sitting in the middle of the golden goody all the time.
Suppose what we call good and evil are not at war at all, but are simply the left and right hands of God, the same eternal being, not rivals, but reflections, not opposites in conflict, but complements in a cosmic rhythm, like inhale and exhale, crest and trough, the light and the shadow that make the pattern visible. This is the truth. The myths have carried for centuries that the world is not divided into saints and sinners, angels and devils, but into two brothers, each performing his role in the grand play of becoming. We have mistaken one hand for salvation and the other for damnation, never realizing that both are necessary for the act of creation, that the shadow gives depth to the light, that the serpent in the garden and the Savior on the cross serve the same unspeakable source. The myth of the two brothers is not a tale of good triumphing over evil. It is the story of polarity, of contrast, of the one playing at being two. And until we see both brothers, both hands, we cannot begin to understand what this life truly is. In myth, we meet them again and again, the radiant brother and the shadowed one, Osiris and Set, Christ and Satan, the hero and the demon. But to take these as mere moral allegories, as the triumph of light over darkness, is to miss the point entirely. They are not antagonists in conflict, but complementary aspects of a deeper unity, polarities which cannot be separated without losing their meaning. For what is up without down? Figure without ground? Good? Without the possibility of evil? This is the pattern of perception itself. We see only through contrast. A form appears only in relation to its background, just as motion is known only against stillness and sound against silence. Likewise, the self arises in opposition to the other and consciousness against the unknown. But our trouble begins when we forget this, when we cling to one pole as real and condemn the other as illusion or sin. Then we split the world in two and try to live in only half of it. The myth does not split. It includes. It holds both brothers and shows us not a war but a tension, a relationship as essential and fruitful as breathing in and breathing out. We are, most of us, brought up to think in rigid opposites. Good must defeat evil, order must conquer chaos, the righteous shall be saved, and the wicked cast out forever. But this is the language of abstraction, not of life. It is the map confused for the territory. For the universe, as it actually moves and breathes, is not made of fixed things. It is a field, a relationship, where what we call good and evil are more like the crest and trough of a wave. You cannot have one without the other. They imply one another. To think otherwise is to fall into the snare of what we might call moral literalism. The belief that good exists here, evil over there, and the task of life is to purify the world by eradicating one half of it. But this is like trying to keep only the front of a coin. The mythic vision is subtler. It speaks not in the cold clarity of either, but in the shimmering ambiguity of symbol. It reveals that the serpent and the Savior are not always as far apart as we might think, that both may be agents of transformation, playing roles in a cosmic drama whose meaning is lost the moment we try to flatten it into simple moral categories. In most mythologies, the Dark Brother is not simply a villain. He is the necessary disruptor, the principle of disturbance, without which there could be no pattern, no clarity, no meaning. For just as resistance gives shape to motion, so the adversary gives depth to the self. It is an error, then, to imagine the so-called devil as a creature apart from God, a rival power, a cosmic outlaw. In the mythic language, the devil is God's left hand. Terrible, yes, but not profane. He plays the part no one else dares to play. The tempter, the accuser, the trickster, the breaker of illusions. He is the fire that burns away pretense. Recall the old image. The serpent who leads to exile from Eden is the very force that awakens consciousness. And even in the Gospel of John, we are told that Judas was chosen not as mistake, but as fulfillment, that the scriptures be accomplished. This is not to glorify cruelty or chaos, but to see that in the pattern of the whole, the Dark Brother is not outside the play. He is inside it. He is the play, the friction, the shadow, the pressure that makes possible revelation. The real danger is not his existence, but our refusal to recognize him as part of ourselves. But inevitably the question comes, if both hands belong to God, then what of the unthinkable? What of rape, of murder, of the human capacity for cruelty that shatters the soul? If we say the dark has its place, do we dare include even this? Let's not confuse this with sentiment. This is not a moral excuse. It is a recognition that the darkest horrors are not proof of a broken world. They are evidence of how deep the game goes. For what would a world look like where no harm was possible, where every danger was padded, every action predetermined, every outcome safe? It would not be a world. It would be a simulation. The price of real freedom, the kind that makes love mean something, that makes courage possible, that makes betrayal cut deep, is the risk that a man might choose the unthinkable, not because God wills it, but because to remove that possibility would be to unmake the entire pattern. And yet even here, the Dark Brother is not a glitch in the system. He is part of the architecture, the tension that reveals what we are. We are not here to worship the shadow, nor to run from it. We are here to see it and to choose, not innocence, but consciousness. Because until you've seen what you're capable of, you don't know what your goodness is worth. The illusion, you see, is not that opposites exist, but that they exist apart. The myth does not ask us to choose between the brothers. It asks us to see through their conflict, to recognize that their strife, like the play of day and night, is the very motion by which the world is formed. It is not a problem to be solved, but a polarity to be understood. This is what the ancients meant when they spoke of the coincidence of opposites, the unity that lies not before or beyond, but within duality, the yin and the yang, locked in eternal rotation, the tree of knowledge, whose fruit brings both death and awakening, the cross that is at once an instrument of torture and a symbol of life eternal. But to see this, we must relinquish the craving for moral certainty. We must loosen our grip on categories and look instead for pattern, for rhythm, for relation. Because life is not built on absolutes. It is woven from tension, from contrast, from movement between poles. In this deeper seeing, the two brothers do not cancel one another. They complete one another. And when we stop trying to divide the world into winners and losers, saved and damned, we begin, perhaps for the first time, to understand what it means to be whole. If we look honestly, we begin to notice the myth of the two brothers is not just out there, in the heavens in Scripture, in the ancient stories. It is in us. You are both. The one who builds and the one who breaks. The generous hand and the grasping one. The part of you that wants to shine and the part that secretly hopes it all collapses just to see what's underneath. And when we deny this inner duality, when we pretend to be pure, good, unshakably virtuous, what happens? We project the shadow, we cast it onto others, onto the world, and then we begin to fight phantoms. We hunt demons that were never outside us to begin with. But to become conscious of your own shadow, to see the trickster, the liar, to the destroyer in your own heart, is not defeat. It is not shameful. It is the beginning of freedom. Because you will not kill the shadow. You were never meant to. The task is not to purify yourself into some saintly ideal, but to become aware enough to choose which part of you leads. The two brothers are still within you. And like any living thing, the one that grows is the one you feed. For then you are no longer possessed. You are no longer driven by the part of yourself you refuse to acknowledge. You are not a divided self acting in the dark, but a whole being aware of both hands. The devil, as myth suggests, is not to be worshipped, but neither is he to be denied. He is to be seen, and in seeing, transformed. So then, what is this all pointing to? That the cosmos, in its very structure, is not a tale of good triumphing over evil, nor of spirit escaping the body, nor of light vanquishing the dark. It is a dance, a pulsation, a rhythm so ancient and so deep that we find it in breath and heartbeat, in wave and flame, in night and morning, the one playing as two, the game of hide and seek. And when you look closely enough, with eyes unclouded by fear and ears uncluttered by doctrine, you begin to hear it, the laughter of the gods behind the masks, the harmony that holds tension without breaking it, the play of the two brothers, each in his part, each in his place, each completing the other. We do not need to solve this, only to see it. We do not need to be rid of our demons, because we never truly lose them. We only learn to live above them. And once you see clearly, you stop running from the shadow.
You see, everyone, everywhere, is looking for the secret of happiness, the secret of success, the secret of love, and of course, the secret of life itself. And the marvelous joke, the one hiding in plain sight, is that the secret is so simple, you overlook it. It's so close, you can't see it. So ordinary, you call it unimportant. The secret of life is simply to be alive. That's it. That's the punchline. But when I say that, people often look disappointed. They frown. as if I've handed them an empty box. They say, that can't be right. Surely there's more. And that thought, you see, is exactly the trick. That thought is what keeps you running in circles, chasing shadows, always preparing to live later but never quite living now. Imagine a dog chasing its tail. Round and round it goes, convinced that just a little more effort will catch it. And of course, the faster it goes, the more elusive the tail becomes. This is what the human mind does when it searches for the meaning of life. It chases what it already has. And in chasing, it misses it. Being alive is not a goal. It is not a prize you win at the end of some long journey. It is what's happening right now, in this very breath, in this very moment. But we don't quite believe that. We've been taught that life is always around the corner, that we must improve, refine, perfect ourselves before we can truly live. And so we spend our days rehearsing for a performance that never comes. We treat the present moment as practice, as preparation, as a stepping stone always for something else later on. But this is it. The rehearsal is the show. The journey is the destination. And the more you try to pin life down, to demand it be more, demand it reveal itself like a secret scroll, the more it slips through your fingers. Like water grasped in a clenched fist. Think about music for a moment. The point of a song is not to get to the end of it. If that were the case, the greatest musicians would be the fastest racing through Beethoven or Bach to arrive at the final note. But that's absurd. We don't listen to music for the ending. We listen for the unfolding, for the play of sound in time. And life is no different. The point of life is not to reach the finish line. The point is to dance while the music is playing, to sway with the rhythm, to laugh at the melody, to feel the vibrations in your bones. And yet most people are running through life like it's a race, desperate to get somewhere, anywhere other than where they are. Now, part of the difficulty comes from the ego, because the ego is built on becoming. The ego survives by always imagining that the next step is where fulfillment lies. It whispers, you're not quite there yet. Just a little more money, a little more knowledge, a little more meditation, a little more time, then you'll arrive. And so you live in a perpetual state of almost happy, almost peaceful, almost free. But the truth is that what you are seeking is what you already are. The ego hates that truth. It resists it. Because if you stop chasing, the ego loses its game. It thrives only in striving, in comparison, in the endless ladder climbing of becoming someone. To simply be well, that's the end of the ego. And so it distracts you with future promises and past regrets, keeping you from the simplicity of the present. This is why I often say, life is a game of hide and seek. The universe hides from itself by pretending to be you. And then, through little glimpses, through moments of laughter or wonder, it finds itself again. And when you see this, truly see it, you can't help but laugh. Because you realize you've been searching for something you could never lose. You've been trying to become what you already are. The seeker was the sought. The player was the game. The question was the answer. And then all the heaviness, the seriousness of the search falls away. Life is revealed not as a problem to be solved, but as a song to be sung, a dance to be danced, a mystery to be enjoyed rather than explained. So then, what does it mean to be alive? It means to feel this breath, to hear the hum of existence right now. It means to taste your food when you eat it, instead of thinking about tomorrow's menu. It means to walk without rushing to arrive, to speak without rehearsing what comes next, to look without searching for meaning. To be alive is not an achievement. It is awareness itself. It is this. But most of us are so busy chasing that we forget to notice. We live as though life were elsewhere, always waiting for us, just beyond the horizon. But tomorrow never comes. There is only ever this eternal now. So what do? You stop grasping. You stop clutching. Life cannot be held like property. It can only be received like a gift. When you open your hand, the water rests gently in your palm. When you open your heart, life reveals itself without effort. You don't have to force it. You don't have to deserve it. You simply have to notice it. And when you do, you see the secret was never hidden at all. Alive, always alive. Even when we forget, even when we chase, even when we doubt, life does not withhold itself. It is what you are. And the moment you recognize that, the search ends. And in ending, a new kind of play begins. So, laugh, dance, sing, because the secret of life is not in the future. It is not in some great beyond. It is here, it is now, it is you. Now, when you begin to see that the secret of life is simply to be alive, something curious happens. You suddenly notice that much of what you were worried about, much of what you were striving for, was rather unnecessary. It was like carrying heavy luggage on a trip when all along you could have walked freely without it. And one of the heaviest bags we carry is the fear of change. You see, we cling to life as though it were a possession. We say, this is my body, my mind, my story, my future. And because we claim it, we fear losing it. But what if being alive is not something you own? What if it's something the universe is doing? Just as a wave is something the ocean is doing, you are something the cosmos is doing. You are not separate from it. You are an event of the whole. And once you see that, change is no longer so terrifying. Because death, then, is not the end of you, as though life was switched off like a lamp. It is simply the wave returning to the sea. We've been tricked into believing that life is a contest we must win, a puzzle we must solve, or a possession we must hold on to. But life is none of these. Life is play, life is music, life is the dance of energy appearing as forms, disappearing as forms, always in motion, always alive. So then, the question arises, if life is simply to be alive, if there is no grand puzzle to solve, what are we supposed to do with ourselves? And the answer is, anything. You see, the universe didn't bring you here with a task list pinned to your chest. There is no cosmic manager keeping score, no divine accountant measuring how productive you've been. Being alive is enough. The rest is play. If you want to paint, paint. If you want to sing, sing. If you want to sit quietly and watch the birds, sit quietly and watch the birds. None of it needs justification. But of course, we are trained from the beginning to believe otherwise. We are told that unless we are productive, unless we are useful, unless we can point to results, then our life is wasted. But that's a dreadful misunderstanding of the game. Does a flower bloom to prove something? Does a bird sing to justify its existence? No, they do these things because it is their nature. And so with us, you don't live to pass a test. You live because life is what's happening. Now, let's return to this question of death for a moment. Because many people, when they hear the secret of life is to be alive, feel uneasy. They say, but what about when I'm no longer alive? What about when it ends? And here is where another joke is revealed. You've never experienced non-existence. Never. Not before you were born, not now, not ever. And when the time comes for this body to return to the earth, what makes you so sure you will experience it as an absence? We imagine death as darkness, as nothingness. But notice even darkness is something. Even nothing is an idea. And if you have never known nothing, why should you assume it is waiting for you? The truth is, life and death are not opposites. They are like front and back, up and down, in and out. They imply each other. You cannot have one without the other. To be alive is already to be woven with death, just as the crest of a wave is woven with the trough. And once you see this, you stop clinging so tightly, because you realize the point is not to avoid endings. The point is to dance while the music is playing. You see, we take life far too seriously. We behave as though the whole affair were a military operation, with objectives and strategies and missions to be accomplished. But life is not a business. It is not a school exam. It is not a courtroom where you are being judged. Life is more like a piece of jazz. It has structure, yes, but within it, endless improvisation. The meaning of jazz is not at the end of the song, but in the playing. The joy is in the riff, the unexpected twist, the laughter of the musicians when someone plays a note that surprises the others. And so it is with life. The meaning is in the improvisation, the surprises, the sheer fact that it is happening at all. But you will miss this music if you are always listening for the finale. You will miss it if you are too busy proving yourself. You will miss it if you are staring at the clock, waiting for something more important to begin. The great insight, then, is not that life contains a hidden purpose. The great insight is that life is the purpose. To be alive is the miracle. Everything else is decoration. When you stop to notice this, everything becomes luminous. The ordinary shines. A cup of tea, steam curling in the light, becomes a sacred event. The sound of the wind through the trees becomes music. Even the act of breathing, which you've been doing your whole life without thought, becomes astonishing. And then you realize the secret of life was never locked away in monasteries or scriptures. It was always here, in the utterly obvious fact of existence. But our trouble is, we take the obvious for granted. We chase the exotic and ignore the simple. We look for God in the heavens while missing the miracle of our own heartbeat. And perhaps this is why sages have always spoken in paradox, in riddles, in laughter. Because when you point directly to the truth, people refuse to see it. But when you dress it up in a cosmic joke, suddenly it sneaks past the defenses of the mind. So, what do you do now? You live, you play, you laugh, you allow yourself to be astonished. You realize you are not a separate little creature trapped inside a bag of skin. You are the universe itself, pretending for a while to be this person with this name, this story, this body. And when this particular act of the play is over, the curtain doesn't fall on life itself. It only falls on this scene. The show goes on in endless forms, endless disguises, endless rhythms. You don't need to know what comes next. That's part of the fun. If you already knew the ending, it would spoil the game. The surprise is the point. And so, trust the dance, trust the music. Don't try to clutch it or control it. Let it carry you. Because the secret of life was never hidden. It was always here, waiting for you to notice. So, laugh at the absurdity, sing along with the melody, and remember, the secret is not in some distant future. The secret is this: to be alive now, fully, playfully, completely. Alive, always alive. Even in change, even in loss, even in the mystery. Because what you are is life itself, and life never ends.
Here we are, staring at something that has troubled spiritual men and women for thousands of years. This battle with lust. And the strange thing is, the more awake you become, the more conscious of the divine, the fiercer this battle seems to grow. Why is that? Why should the person who seeks God most earnestly be the very one who wrestles most deeply with desire? Let me tell you what is happening here. And I must warn you, this is not the comfortable sermon you might expect. This is about seeing the whole picture, not just the parts we like to talk about in public. The first thing to understand is this: when you awaken spiritually, when you begin to see life as it truly is, you don't become less human. You become more human. You become more aware of everything. The divine, yes, but also the earthly. the sacred and the profane, the angelic and the animal. Think of it this way. Before awakening, you were like a person walking through life half asleep. Your senses were dulled. Your awareness was clouded. But awakening is like turning up the volume on everything. Suddenly you can hear the birds singing more clearly. You can taste your food more vividly. You can feel the sun on your skin with greater intensity. And yes, you can feel desire more powerfully too. This is the first reason. Spiritual sensitivity amplifies everything. When you open your spiritual eyes, you don't just open them to heaven. You open them to the full spectrum of human experience. The same sensitivity that lets you feel God's presence also makes you more aware of the body's yearnings. The same consciousness that perceives divine beauty also perceives earthly beauty with shocking intensity. The old religious teachers often missed this point. They thought awakening would make you less aware of the flesh, but it's exactly the opposite. A spiritually awake person feels everything more deeply: joy and sorrow, peace and restlessness, love and lust. The heightened state of awareness that comes with spiritual growth doesn't shut down your humanity. It turns up the dial on all of it. So here you are, a person seeking God, and suddenly you find yourself feeling desire more intensely than ever before. And you think something has gone wrong. You think you're falling backward. But actually, you're just becoming more alive, more aware, more fully human. The question is not how to stop feeling. The question is how to be with what you feel without being controlled by it. Now let's look at the second reason. And this one is painful to admit. Those who are spiritually awake often find themselves alone, not because they're better than others, but because they see things differently. They can't engage in the usual conversations anymore. The gossip feels hollow. The endless chatter about nothing feels unbearable. The obsession with status and money and appearances seems like children playing make-believe. And so they drift away from the crowd. Or the crowd drifts away from them. Either way, they end up alone. And loneliness is a very particular kind of hunger. When you have no one to share your thoughts with. When you have no one who understands the things you're seeing. When you're carrying visions and insights that others would think mad, you feel isolated in a way that cuts deep. Lust becomes a kind of bridge back to human connection. Even if it's false connection, even if it's empty connection, at least it's something. At least for a moment you're not alone. The body pressed against another body. The eyes meeting another's eyes. For that brief time, the terrible loneliness lifts. Do you see the trap? The very path that leads you closer to truth also leads you further from the crowd. And the human animal in you cries out for contact, for touch, for the warmth of another. Lust offers a counterfeit solution. It promises connection but delivers only more isolation. Because after the moment passes, you're still alone, often more alone than before. This is why so many spiritual seekers, so many monks and mystics and holy men and women throughout history have struggled in secret with desire. They withdrew from the world to seek God. And they found God, yes, but they also found crushing loneliness. And lust came knocking at the door of that loneliness, offering companionship, even if only for an hour. The third reason is perhaps the most mysterious. When you begin to wake up spiritually, you become a threat. Not to people necessarily, though sometimes to them too. But you become a threat to the forces that keep humanity asleep. Call them what you will. Demons, if you like. The powers of darkness. Or simply the momentum of unconsciousness that governs most human life. Whatever you call these forces, they do not want you awake. They do not want you seeing clearly. They do not want you spreading consciousness to others. And so they attack. They probe for weaknesses. They look for ways to pull you back into the dream, back into the trance, back into the endless cycle of grasping and wanting and never being satisfied. Lust is a magnificent weapon for this purpose. Why? Because it works. It really does pull people back into unconsciousness. When you're caught in the grip of lust, when desire is burning through you, you cannot think clearly, you cannot meditate, you cannot pray, You cannot rest in that quiet inner space where God speaks. You are pulled entirely into the body, into sensation, into the fever of wanting something right now. And so the attacks come, stronger and stronger as you grow in awareness. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're doing something right. You're waking up. And the forces of sleep do not give up their prisoners without a fight. This is what the scriptures mean when they speak of spiritual warfare. It's not a metaphor. It's not poetry. It's the actual experience of anyone who tries to live consciously in an unconscious world. The battle is real. The enemy is real. And lust is one of his favorite weapons because it works so terribly well. The fourth reason is about wounds. Old wounds. Deep wounds. Wounds we carry from childhood. From rejection. From betrayal. From all the ways life has hurt us before we even knew what was happening. Most people walk through life never looking at these wounds. They're too painful, too frightening. But when you begin to wake up spiritually, you start seeing them. You start feeling them. All the old pain rises to the surface. The abandonment, the shame, the fear of not being loved, the conviction that you're not enough. And here's what happens. Lust offers to soothe these wounds. It offers a temporary balm. When you're in the grip of desire, when you're pursuing or being pursued, you forget the pain for a while. You feel wanted. You feel alive. You feel like maybe, just maybe, you are enough after all. But it's a lie. Lust doesn't heal wounds. It just covers them up for a moment. Like putting a bandage on a festering sore without cleaning it first. The infection remains, and often grows worse. Because now you've added shame to the wound. Now you've added the knowledge that you're using people, or being used, or both. Now you've added another layer of pain on top of the original pain. The spiritually awake person sees all of this. They see the wound. They see the lust rising to cover it. They see the shame that follows. They see the whole cycle. And seeing it doesn't make it stop. Sometimes seeing it makes it worse. Because now you're aware of what you're doing even while you're doing it. You're conscious of the trap, even as you step into it. Healing these old wounds requires something else entirely. It requires facing them, sitting with them, letting them be felt without running away into distraction or comfort or false connection. This is hard work, the hardest work there is. And many people, even spiritually awakened people, would rather battle lust than do this deeper work of healing. Because at least lust offers moments of pleasure, however brief. The work of healing offers only pain, at least at first. The fifth reason is the most paradoxical of all. The very gifts that make you spiritually powerful also make you vulnerable. When you have heightened sensitivity, when you can feel the divine presence, when you can sense the interconnection of all things, you're operating at a very high frequency. Your consciousness is expanded. Your awareness is vast. But you're still in a body. You're still flesh and blood. You're still subject to all the drives and hungers and needs of the animal self. And here's the strange thing. The higher your consciousness rises, the stronger the pull downward becomes. It's as if the universe seeks balance, as if the very expansion of your spiritual nature creates an equal and opposite pull toward the purely physical. This is why so many spiritual teachers, so many gifted healers and prophets and visionaries have fallen into scandals of the flesh. Not because they were hypocrites, not because their spiritual gifts were fake, but because the combination of high spiritual power and unguarded physical nature creates a dangerous situation. Like a tall building without a foundation. The higher it rises, the more catastrophic the fall. The answer to this is discipline. But not the grim teeth-gritting kind of discipline that feels like punishment. Rather the discipline of tending to the whole self, spirit and body, mind and flesh. You cannot just soar in the spiritual realms and ignore the needs of the body. You cannot just pray and meditate and expect the physical nature to take care of itself.
The body needs to be honored, fed properly, exercised, given rest, given healthy touch and connection, given creative expression. When these needs are met in healthy ways, lust has less power. When they're ignored or denied, lust becomes overwhelming because it's trying to fill too many holes at once. So what do we do with all of this? How do we live with this strange combination of heightened spiritual awareness and powerful physical desire? First, we stop pretending the battle doesn't exist. We stop acting as if spiritual people are supposed to float above all this earthly messiness. The flesh is real. Desire is real. And fighting a real enemy requires acknowledging it's there. Second, we stop fighting alone. The isolation I spoke of earlier is part of the trap. Lust thrives in secrecy. It grows in darkness. When we can find even one other person to be honest with, someone who won't judge us but will stand with us, the power of lust begins to break. Not because confession is magic, but because isolation is what feeds the beast. Third, we attend to the wounds. This means sitting with the pain instead of running from it. This means feeling the loneliness instead of medicating it with false connection. This means looking at the old rejections and abandonments and letting them be seen and acknowledged. It's painful work, but it's the only work that actually heals. Fourth, we practice presence with our desire without acting on it. This is perhaps the hardest practice of all. When lust rises, the instinct is to either indulge it or suppress it. Both of these are forms of violence. Indulging it leads to shame and emptiness. Suppressing it leads to explosion later. The middle way is to simply be present with the feeling. To feel the heat of desire without having to do anything about it. To notice how it rises and falls like a wave. To observe it the way you might watch a storm from a safe place. This takes tremendous courage. But it's in this space of presence without action that real transformation happens. Not because you're fighting the desire, but because you're neither fighting it nor feeding it. You're just watching it. And in the watching, something shifts. Finally, we remember that we are not this battle. We are not the desire or the shame or the struggle. We are the awareness within which all of this arises. Like the sky that watches the weather pass through, the storms come and go, the clouds gather and disperse, but the sky remains unchanged. When you can rest in this awareness, even for a moment, the battle loses its power to define you. Yes, lust may still arise. Yes, the struggle may continue, but you're no longer identified with it. You're no longer convinced that this struggle is who you are. The spiritually awake struggle with lust not because they're failing, but because they're awake enough to feel the full force of being human. They're sensitive enough to feel every current, every drive, every hunger. And they're isolated enough to face these things often without support or understanding. But this struggle, as painful as it is, can become a teacher. It can show us where we're wounded and need healing. It can reveal our need for real human connection, not false substitutes. It can humble us, reminding us that we're not as far above the flesh as we might like to think. And it can deepen our compassion for every other human being struggling with their own desires and weaknesses. The battle with lust is not a sign that you're spiritually failing. It's often a sign that you're spiritually growing. Growing into a fuller awareness of what it means to be both spirit and flesh, both divine and animal, both awakened and still very much in the process of learning what that awakening means. So be gentle with yourself. Be honest about the struggle. Seek help when you need it. Attend to your wounds. Practice presence with your desires without being controlled by them. And remember, always remember, that you are not alone in this battle. Every mystic, every saint, every truly awakened person has walked this same difficult path. The flesh is weak, yes, but the spirit...
Not long ago, I spoke with a young man. He sat across from me, leaning forward in his chair, fidgeting with his hands, as though still running, even while seated. There was nothing particularly unusual about him. He was not a failure, nor a beggar, nor a saint. He was, in many respects, the kind of man you might pass on the street and not think twice about. He had a decent job, friends who liked him, a family who cared for him. But underneath the surface of his life, there was a deep and gnawing unease. As he spoke, I noticed his eyes kept darting around the room, as though chasing some invisible fly. He told me, I can't remember the last time I felt present. Even when I sit with my child, laughing, I find myself worrying about bills. Even in bed at night, I'm planning the next week, the next year. I don't feel here, I feel somewhere else. And you see, I told him something I'll tell you as well. His story is not his alone. It belongs to every one of us. In fact, I promised him that I would share it, not because his story is dramatic or unique, but precisely because it is ordinary. It is the common story of human beings in the modern world. But I won't tell you the ending just yet, because the part that matters most can only be understood once we take the journey together. The ending only makes sense if you walk with me through the questions that haunted him, and perhaps haunt you as well. So let us set his story aside for now, like a bookmark placed in a well-worn book. We will return to it before long. Now, let us ask the question, why is it that the present moment, which is all we ever truly have, feels so difficult to remain in? It should be the most natural thing in the world. After all, where else could you possibly be? You are not in yesterday, except in thought. You are not in tomorrow, except in imagination. In reality, you are here, breathing, listening. Life is unfolding before your very eyes. And yet, for some reason, we resist it. We slip away from now as though it was something dangerous. The young man, when he sat at the dinner table with his child, should have found delight in the simple sound of laughter, the warmth of food, the ordinary blessing of being alive. But instead, his mind buzzed with the unfinished tasks of the day, the upcoming worries of the week, the endless pressure to prepare for a life he had not yet lived. And so it is with us. We live in the present as though it were a waiting room for the future. The mind whispers, not this, something else, something more. Why? Why do we resist what is, in fact, the only reality? It is because the present moment is too real, too raw, too unedited. To be here fully means to face yourself without distraction, to admit that this is your life, not tomorrow, not someday, but now. And that realization frightens us, because if this moment is all there is, then there is no more postponing your happiness. There is no guarantee of another chance. There is only this, and that feels unbearably final. So we run, we hide in memory, we build castles in imagination, we live in a perpetual elsewhere, convinced that one day, when conditions are just right, we will finally arrive. But life does not work that way. Life is always now, never then. The young man told me that whenever he tried to sit still, to meditate, or simply to be, he felt restless, agitated, almost as though something was wrong. He couldn't bear the silence. He couldn't bear the presence of his own mind. So he reached for his phone, or switched on the television, or threw himself into his work, anything to escape the unbearable weight of being here. And perhaps you know that feeling too. Perhaps you have tried to pause, and within seconds your mind fills with worries or regrets, or that peculiar sense that you should be doing something else. We call it boredom, but what it really is fear. Fear of facing ourselves. This is why so much of our culture is built upon distraction, endless entertainment, constant stimulation, a new headline, a new message, a new piece of information to devour. Because in silence, in stillness, the truth of now comes rushing in, and we find it overwhelming. But I want you to notice something subtle. To resist something is already to be in relationship with it. The very fact that you feel restless in the present moment means you are already brushing against it. The discomfort is not proof that you are far away, it is proof that you are close. Like standing at the edge of the ocean, where the waves lap at your feet, the resistance is a sign that the water is near. Now, I must pause here, because I want to say something important. If you have ever felt this restlessness, this inability to stay present, you are not alone. And this is why I speak at all. We are building, slowly, a small circle of people willing to look at these questions together, to admit the difficulty and not run from it. If you feel resonance with this, then you are already part of that circle. The resistance we feel toward the present is not simply personal, it is cultural. From childhood, we are trained to chase. We are taught that life is about progress, about becoming, about achieving. We delay gratification, we set goals, we measure ourselves by the future. And so when someone says, be here now, it feels almost like nonsense. It feels unnatural, because we have been conditioned to believe that the real treasure always lies just over the next hill. But what happens when we actually reach the hill? Have you noticed? The goal achieved, the desire fulfilled, the box ticked, how quickly the satisfaction fades. And once again, the mind says, not this, something more. This is the cycle the young man found himself in. He would complete a project at work, only to feel anxious about the next one. He would save some money, only to feel it was never enough. He would sit with his family, only to feel guilty that he was not planning better for their future. The poor fellow was never here, and so he was never at peace. But there is a hidden gift in this recognition. For the very dissatisfaction you feel with running endlessly forward is itself the beginning of awakening. To notice that you are not here, to see clearly that you are resisting, is already a step closer to presence. It means you have begun to wake from the dream of elsewhere. And so I said to the young man, what you seek is not in the distance, it is not in tomorrow, it is not in the perfection of your plans. It is right here, in the very moment you are running from. He shook his head. Of course, he said he couldn't see it. That is natural. Because the truth of this cannot be given in words. It must be discovered in experience. That is why his story does not end here, for his discovery came later in an unexpected moment, and I will share that with you. But only once we have looked deeper into the nature of this resistance. For unless you understand why we all flee the present, his story will not make sense. So let us keep walking. Let us examine together why humanity, for all its brilliance, has built its entire life upon the illusion of elsewhere. For until we see the root of this madness, we will never be free. Why is it that we resist the present moment with such persistence? It is because the present moment is the one thing we cannot bend to our will. You may alter the memory of the past in your imagination. You may plan for the future and dream of what is to come. But the present arrives uninvited, unpolished, untamed. It comes in its own clothing, and it does not ask your permission. To surrender to it is to admit that you are not in charge, and this, more than anything else, terrifies us. Think again of the young man, the restless one who could not sit still at his dinner table. He wanted, with all his might, to be a good father, a good worker, a decent man. These are noble desires. But beneath them was the hidden demand for control, the quiet belief that if only he did everything right, life would turn out according to plan. So when he sat with his child, he was not present. Because presence admits uncertainty, and uncertainty is unbearable for the mind that seeks control. But here lies the paradox. The only true stability comes from releasing our grip on control. The river cannot be conquered by trying to dam it up. It is far too powerful, too alive. The river teaches you only one way, to float to let go, to allow yourself to be carried by its current. In the same way, the present moment becomes not frightening, but wondrous when you stop resisting its flow. The young man, in his restless evenings, imagined that if he let go of striving, he would collapse into passivity. He worried that if he stopped planning, he would fail his family. "Won't I lose my drive?" he asked. Perhaps you've asked this yourself. It is a common fear. But you see, when you release the exhausting grip of control, you do not lose energy, you gain it. You stop leaking your life force into endless anxiety. Instead, your actions rise up naturally, like a spring bubbling from the ground. You dance, not because you must, but because you are moved by the music itself. Now, pause for a moment and notice something. You are listening to these words right now. This, in itself, is proof that you can give your attention wholly to one thing. You may already feel, however faintly, that something in this reflection resonates with your own life. And this recognition is important because when you find yourself saying, "Yes, I know this," you are not just hearing me, you are hearing yourself. That resonance is the thread that ties us together. And you see, that is what this little circle is about. We gather here not as isolated minds, but as a kind of quiet community, reminding one another of what is easily forgotten, that there is no someday, there is only today. But let us return to the man, for his story is the key. One evening, after a long day at work, his mind buzzing with the usual anxieties, he sat down to dinner. His child climbed into his lap, laughing about some small and silly thing, as children do. For a moment, the young man's mind began to slip away, drifting back into bills, into deadlines, into plans. But then something remarkable happened. He caught himself. He saw, with piercing clarity, that he was about to miss this very moment. And instead of letting his mind run, he stayed. He simply stayed. For a few breaths, he allowed himself to drop the resistance. And in those breaths, he felt the warmth of his child against his chest, heard the laughter as though for the first time, smelled the food on the table, saw the ordinary miracle of life unfolding in front of him. And he wept. He wept because he realized that he had been running from this for years. The present had not been absent. It was always here, waiting patiently. The only thing missing was his willingness to arrive. When he told me this later, he said it felt like falling into a river, terrifying at first, but then strangely liberating. He discovered that life did not collapse when he let go of control. In fact, it became fuller, richer, more alive than he had ever known. He discovered that the very thing he had been chasing, peace, contentment, joy, was not in the distance at all. It was in the simple act of being here. And this is where the teaching comes alive. For the resistance you feel toward the present moment is not an enemy, it is a teacher. The restlessness, the agitation, the endless chase, these are not signs that you are broken. They are signs that you are human. They are the invitation to awaken. So I say to you, do not condemn yourself for resisting. Notice it. Hold it gently. Realize that in the very act of noticing, you have already stepped closer to presence. The resistance is like the ringing of a bell, reminding you that now is calling. And here is the secret the young man discovered. Once you begin to allow even a sliver of the present in life, rushes in to meet you. You need not force it. You need only stop running. Now, you might ask, what does it mean to live this way? It does not mean abandoning plans or refusing to care for tomorrow. It means not using tomorrow as an escape from today. You may plant seeds, but you do not live in the harvest. You live in the planting itself. You may dream, but you do not flee into dreams. You root yourself here in the ordinary miracle of breath and laughter and sunlight. And the wonderful thing is that when you do, the future often takes care of itself, because the best preparation for tomorrow is not anxiety today, but presence today. From presence, wise action arises. From presence, you respond to life rather than react to it. The young man learned this slowly, not in one grand epiphany, but in countless small moments. Each time he noticed his mind running away, he gently returned, like a father guiding a child back to the table. And each time, he found that the present was not frightening after all. It was tender. It was alive. And so it is with you. The door back to now is never locked. It does not require years of effort. It requires only the willingness to step through it, again and again, whenever you remember. And perhaps, in this very moment, you can feel it. The weight of the chair beneath you, the rhythm of your breathing, the simple fact of being alive. This is the doorway. And once you notice it, you are already through. Now, before we close, I want to say this. What you and I are doing here is not an isolated act. It is part of something larger. More and more people are beginning to wake from the dream of someday. And in that awakening, we are forming a kind of invisible community, a gathering around the fire of presence. You may not see the others, but you are not alone. We are all here together in this moment. And that, perhaps, is the greatest gift. Because the young man's story is not only his, it is yours, it is mine, it is the story of every human being who has ever wrestled with the restless mind and discovered, at last, the peace of simply being. So let me leave you with this. The ending of his story is not an ending at all. It is a beginning. For every time you choose to arrive in the present, you begin again, and life, in its inexhaustible generosity, will always meet you here.